The courtroom was silent. Not a whisper, not a shuffle of paper. Everyone knew this testimony would be big, but no one could have predicted how it would unfold. Jaime Fox entered, composed at first glance, but those who watched closely saw the tremble in his hands, the way he gripped the edge of the stand as if holding on to something real. Then, without warning, he broke down, sobbing uncontrollably, his voice cracking under the weight of what he was about to say. He wasn't acting. This was raw, unfiltered pain. The words came slowly at first, then poured out like a flood. He described the night he spent inside Sean Diddy Comium's mansion, the party, the drinks, the locked doors, and the video they made him watch. Leaked notes from the court transcript combined with eyewitness reports paint a horrifying picture. This wasn't the same Jaime Fox the public knew, the confident, charming, unshakable entertainer. This was a man haunted. And as his words filled the room, even the jurors sat frozen. It wasn't just what he saw, it was how it was hidden, how everything seemed orchestrated, protected, and how for years no one dared to speak up. Jaime Fox's connection to Diddy was well documented over the years. In public, they shared laughs, exchanged playful jabs during award show after parties, and posed for pictures that screamed luxury, brotherhood, and power. But behind closed doors, that relationship was nothing more than a mask, a carefully curated illusion that crumbled the night Jaime accepted an invitation to spend the night at Diddy's infamous mansion. As he recounted the evening, his voice dropped to a whisper. Diddy's house was where the music lived, he said, describing the energy, the deals, the influence. But what he didn't realize was that some parties weren't meant for celebration. They were meant for initiation. That night, he was led into a private wing of the mansion after an evening of heavy drinking and luxury lounging. There were people he didn't recognize, people who weren't artists, producers, or executives, people who looked uncomfortable. His confusion deepened when one of Diddy's aides escorted him to a soundproofed theater room where a video had already been queued up. He said he didn't know what was going on. They told him to stay, to relax, that Diddy had a surprise. The atmosphere shifted the moment the lights dimmed and the laughter faded. Guests began separating into smaller, secretive rooms. Jaime felt the change instantly. He described how the doors were locked, how they told him to watch the screen because everyone who's somebody has been through this. What followed left him mentally wrecked for years. He couldn't tell if what he saw was real or staged, but he knew what he felt. His stomach dropped, panic surged through his chest, and he tried to leave, but the doors wouldn't budge. He recalled how Diddy looked at him coldly afterward, like he knew exactly what Jaime had seen, but didn't care. Like it was all part of the plan. The judge called for a 5-minute recess after Jaime paused, clearly shaken. When he returned, his eyes were red, his hands still trembling. The emotional damage wasn't what hit the courtroom hardest. It was the aftermath. Jaime explained how calls started coming in after that night. Not threats, just reminders. A 7-figure check arrived along with an NDA. He refused it. That's when the pushback started. Projects fell through, offers disappeared, and he realized the quiet freeze-out was punishment enough. Jaime described how other celebrities had confided in him over the years, people who had similar experiences but were too afraid to speak. "You think I'm the only one?" he asked. "You think I'm brave? I'm not. I'm just tired." A gasp reportedly echoed through the gallery when he mentioned by name 3 other well-known entertainers who he claimed were at that mansion during similar parties. The names were redacted in the official transcript, but multiple outlets have suggested one was a Grammy-winning rapper, another a beloved late-night host, and the third an actress known for activism. Jaime closed this part of his testimony by saying, "We wear smiles, suits, sunglasses, but behind it, a lot of us are broken. Some things you can't unsee." The courtroom grew darker in tone as Jaime leaned forward, explaining the most chilling part of his experience. Not just what he saw that night, but what he learned afterward. What began as a disturbing encounter spiraled into something deeper, more calculated, and far more terrifying than he'd imagined. This wasn't just about a strange party or off-color incidents. It was about systematic control, leverage, and blackmail. He spoke about the existence of a hidden archive, an alleged vault of digital recordings stored within a private encrypted server somewhere on Diddy's estate. He hadn't seen the room himself, but former insiders confirmed its existence. He described it as a surveillance nerve center, complete with monitors, secured hard drives, and locked cabinets accessible only to a select few. "They kept everything," Jaime said, pausing to let the words settle. Not just clips of people partying, but footage of them in compromising positions, filmed without consent. Hidden cameras in bedrooms, hallways, bathrooms, places where people believed they had privacy. According to Jaime, the collection wasn't just a hobby. It was a currency of secrets. Footage of celebrities, politicians, athletes, some intoxicated, others engaged in disturbing or non-consensual behavior. It wasn't just about watching. It was about owning people, making sure no one ever turned against them. Insurance policies. Jaime recounted receiving a package months later, a flash drive with grainy footage of his reaction in the theater room. No audio, just his expressions as he watched whatever played on the screen. The final frame read, "Just remember." Jaime admitted he stared at that screen for over an hour. He didn't sleep that night. He realized it was a warning. He was being told, "We see you. We own your silence." After that, he kept his mouth shut. Every time he saw another story in the headlines, someone else accused or mysteriously backing away from the industry, he wondered, were they filmed too? He alleged these archives had been weaponized multiple times to shut down lawsuits, silence accusers, force endorsements, or public support from those who had privately cut ties with Diddy. "Some of the people you see defending him," he said, "they're not doing it because they like him. They're doing it because they're scared, because they don't want their footage to surface." One of the most damning moments came when Jaime spoke of a late-night call from a well-known actress who had also stayed at the mansion. She was crying, panicking. She received a video of herself passed out with someone hovering over her, someone she didn't recognize. She didn't know if anything happened beyond what was shown. Jaime didn't know what to tell her. The judge paused the session, concerned about the emotional toll being taken on him. Before stepping down for a break, Jaime issued one last chilling comment. "They don't just collect secrets. They manufacture silence. They build a cage made of your worst moments. And then they hold the key." By this point, the mood in the courtroom had shifted entirely. This wasn't just about one man's crimes. It was about the possibility of a sprawling system built on manipulation, fear, and control. And the longer Jaime spoke, the more it became clear. Diddy's empire, if true, wasn't just constructed from music or business deals. It was built on leverage, the kind that doesn't just ruin careers, the kind that ends lives. When court resumed after a short recess, Jaime returned to the stand visibly shaken, but more resolute. What he said next would leave the courtroom in stunned silence. He recounted how weeks after receiving the flash drive, two men approached him outside a restaurant in Los Angeles. Dressed like security or bodyguards, they didn't identify themselves. One simply handed him a phone, said Diddy wanted to talk, and stepped back. On the other end was Diddy's voice, calm, collected. "I hope you're not planning on saying anything you'll regret, my man," Diddy reportedly said. "That's the kind of thing that can mess up legacies. You're a legend, Jamie. Don't lose that over something that isn't your business." It wasn't the words alone. It was the implication that Diddy had eyes on him, that he could reach him anywhere, any time. Jaime testified that after the call, he found himself constantly looking over his shoulder. He changed his phone, canceled appearances, and began moving with private security. He said he believed it was no coincidence that shortly after this encounter, a gossip outlet ran a fabricated scandal implying he was involved in misconduct. It was a warning shot. It was like Diddy was telling him, "We can build a lie around you just as fast as we can destroy you with the truth." In court, Jaime explained how Diddy's world wasn't just about celebrity and wealth, it was about surveillance, silence, and power. He described how guests at parties were often required to hand over their phones, for privacy reasons. But after what he had experienced, Jaime believed those phones were cloned. Messages, contacts, voicemails, copied and archived. "People think the danger was in what they did at those parties," Jaime said. "But the real danger was in what they took from you. Your data, your voice, your fear." A prosecutor presented evidence of NDAs signed by dozens of high-profile guests who attended parties at Diddy's estates. These documents were more aggressive than typical confidentiality agreements. Some warned against expressing negative experiences in public settings. Jaime confirmed he had been asked to sign something similar. He refused, but that's when everything changed. His brand endorsements began to fall through. A film project he was developing was suddenly dropped by its distributor. Studios stopped returning calls. "It was like I became radioactive overnight," Jaime said. "I wasn't blacklisted for doing something wrong. I was blacklisted for not playing along." The court grew increasingly captivated and horrified as Jaime delved deeper into what he called the mechanics of the mansion. He began to describe specific rooms he was shown during his overnight stay. Rooms that didn't appear on the blueprints. He recalled being led through a hallway behind a bookcase, which opened into a surveillance control room staffed by two quiet men who never made eye contact. Jaime said this wasn't a tour. It felt like an intimidation tactic. One of the men showed him a monitor with feeds from throughout the house: bedrooms, spas, private lounges. "I didn't ask to see anything," Jaime clarified, "but they wanted me to know that they had everything." He asked who had access to the recordings. The response was simple: only him, referring to Diddy. Later that night, Jaime was told that his bedroom was down a different hallway from where the other guests were staying. He thought it was odd. The room was opulent but cold. No windows, cameras clearly visible in the corners. "I didn't feel like a guest," Jaime said. "I felt like a suspect in an interrogation room." He tried to sleep, but couldn't. Around 2 a.m., he heard faint music and laughter. He stepped out to see a procession of individuals in robes walking through the hallway toward the theater room. Jaime followed at a distance and witnessed what he could only describe as a ritualistic gathering. Guests were being handed drinks, some blindfolded, some filmed. At the center of the room, Diddy stood orchestrating everything with a smile. What disturbed Jaime the most was the presence of handlers, men who weren't guests but facilitators. They kept track of everyone, ensured the cameras rolled, whispered in ears. Jaime believed they weren't just filming. They were documenting behavior for leverage. When the event ended, Jaime went back to his room but found the door ajar. Inside, everything was untouched except for a photo of him and Diddy from years ago now sitting on the nightstand. He swore it hadn't been there before. On the back was a handwritten note, Brotherhood. During his final day of testimony, Jaime's emotional shield fully broke. His voice cracked as he described a visit he received months later from an FBI agent. This agent, who requested anonymity and had reportedly been investigating Diddy for years, reached out unofficially. According to Jaime, the agent claimed there were over 30 sealed complaints involving misconduct, trafficking, and extortion connected to Diddy and his associates, but none had made it past grand juries. Jaime asked why. The agent reportedly said, "He's protected. Top-level connections. People in places you wouldn't believe." That's when Jaime dropped the biggest bombshell of the trial. He claimed the agent told him there were sealed documents implicating a former U.S. president in attending at least one of Diddy's exclusive fundraisers, one where surveillance tapes were believed to be recorded. Jaime made it clear he didn't know if anything illegal happened, but he said it was no coincidence that high-ranking individuals had avoided association with the investigation. Jaime said the agent warned him, "If you go public, you won't just be going up against Diddy, you'll be going up against the whole machine." He closed his testimony with tears streaming down his face, pleading, not just for justice, but for the public to understand. "This isn't about revenge," he said. "It's about stopping something that's been hidden for too long. This is bigger than music, bigger than me, and if something happens to me after this, I want the world to know I told the truth." As Jaime continued his testimony, he detailed a chilling night during his visit that he called the blackout incident. It wasn't just metaphorical. He described how, at around 2 a.m., the entire estate plunged into sudden darkness. At first, he thought it was a power outage, but the timing felt off. The music had stopped abruptly. The hallway lights blinked twice, and then silence. He remembered stepping into the hallway where the air had turned cold, not just from the air conditioning, but from a tension that wrapped around the house like a storm cloud. Everyone froze. The vibe shifted. No one was laughing. No one was talking. It was like they'd been through this before. A tall man in a suit, too serious for a party, emerged from one of the rooms and said, "No phones, no cameras, everyone back inside." Jaime returned to his room, but curiosity got the better of him. He crept down the hallway, peeking through a cracked door where strange sounds echoed from within. Whispers, something metallic clanging, and then a scream, muffled. Male. He wouldn't say who he saw, but he did confirm that what he witnessed was not a party game, and not consensual. He saw shadows moving, figures standing in a circle, and what looked like someone being restrained. A woman walked calmly through the room with a small notepad, marking something down. Then she made eye contact with him through the crack in the door. She didn't scream. She didn't alert anyone. She just smiled. Then shut the door in his face. Jaime fell back, stunned. "That's when I knew," he told the jury. "This wasn't a home. This was a theater, a stage where people were made into props." Jaime's voice cracked as he recalled the final part of his stay, the upstairs level that was strictly off-limits. At the party, guests were told not to go upstairs unless invited. But Jaime, trying to find a restroom and avoiding a crowd in the hallway, accidentally opened the wrong door and found himself at the bottom of a staircase. It was dimly lit with red emergency bulbs, and a faint hum came from above. He swore he saw 2 people at the top of the stairs whispering. One looked directly at him. "You lost?" the man asked coldly. Jaime apologized and turned back, but not before catching a glimpse of what looked like a heavy black curtain hanging in the hallway. Under it, faint white light blinked. "I knew that was where they kept the good stuff," he said sarcastically. "Not good like fun. Good like evidence. Secrets. Control." Later, a friend told him the upstairs level was where the meetings happened. Jaime asked, "What kind of meetings?" The response, "The kind where people give up something to get something." That line haunted him for years. As the courtroom neared the end of Jaime's testimony, the prosecutor asked the question everyone had been waiting to hear. "Why didn't you come forward earlier?" Jaime looked down, took a deep breath, and began. "I was scared," he admitted. "Not for my career. Forget that. I was scared for my life, for my family, for anyone close to me. You don't understand the reach this man has. It's not just about music. It's about silence. He makes people disappear. If not physically, then from relevance, from the industry, from protection. Ask anyone who's tried." He recounted several instances over the years where people who had tried to expose or challenge Diddy were met with immediate consequences: lawsuits, shutdowns, surveillance, unexplained firings. "You get iced out," he said. "They don't need to kill you, they just erase you." But when the stories began to pile up, Cassie's testimony, the staff leaks, the federal investigation, Jaime knew it was time. "If I stayed quiet now, I was complicit," he said, "and I couldn't live with that anymore." His final words in the courtroom shook everyone. "Everyone thinks Hollywood is built on dreams," he said, "but the truth is, it's built on secrets. And this man, he collected more secrets than anyone. I just hope speaking mine helps break whatever spell he had on all of us." The judge called for a recess. As Jaime walked back to his seat, reporters noted that even some jurors wiped tears from their eyes. The silence that followed was not just from the court. It was a silence of reckoning, the kind that comes when a celebrity's world cracks wide open, and the truth has nowhere left to hide.